Night by Elie Wiesel, Chapter 1. They called him Moshe the Beetle, as though he had never had a surname in his life. He was a man of all work at a Hasidic synagogue. The Jews of Siget, the little town in Transylvania where I spent my childhood, were very fond of him. He was very poor and lived humbly. Generally, my fellow townspeople, though they would help the poor, were not particularly fond of them. Moshe the Beetle was the exception. Nobody ever felt embarrassed by him. Nobody ever felt encumbered by his presence. He was a past master in the art of making himself insignificant, of seeming invisible. Physically, he was awkward as a clown. He made people smile with his waif-like timidity. I loved his great dreaming eyes, their gaze lost in the distance. He spoke little. He used to sing, or rather to chant. Such snatches as you could hear told of the suffering of the divinity, of the exile of Providence, who, according to the Kabbalah, awaits his deliverance in that of man. I got to know him toward the end of 1941. I was 12. I believed profoundly. During the day I studied the Talmud, and at night I ran to the synagogue to weep over the destruction of the temple. One day I asked my father to find me a master to guide me in my studies of the Kabbalah. "You're too young for that." Maimonides said it was only at 30 that one had the right to venture into the perilous world of mysticism. You must first study the basic subjects within your own understanding. My father was a cultured, rather unsentimental man. There was never any display of emotion, even at home. He was more concerned with others than with his own family. The Jewish community in Siget held him in the greatest esteem. They often used to consult him about public matters, and even about private ones. There were 4 of us children. Hilda, the eldest, then Bia. I was the third and the only son, and the baby of the family was Sephora. My parents ran a shop. Hilda and Bia helped them with work. As for me, they said my place was at school. "There aren't any Kabbalists in Siget," my father would repeat. He wanted to drive the notion out of my head, but it was in vain. I found a master for myself, Moshe the Beetle. He had noticed me one day at dusk when I was praying. "Why do you weep when you pray?" he asked me, as though he had known me a long time. "I don't know why," I answered, greatly disturbed. The question had never entered my head. I wept because of something inside me that felt the need for tears. That was all I knew. "Why do you pray?" he asked me after a moment. Why did I pray? A strange question. Why did I live? Why did I breathe? I didn't know why. I don't know why, I said, even more disturbed and ill at ease. I don't know why. After that day I saw him often. He explained to me with great insistence that every question possessed a power that did not lie in the answer. Man raises himself towards God by the question he asks him, he was fond of repeating. That is the true dialogue. Man questions God and God answers. But we don't answer. We don't understand his answers. We can't understand them because they come from the depths of the soul, and they stay there until death. You will find the true answers, Eliezer, only within yourself. "And why do you pray, Moshe?" I asked him. "I pray to the God within me that he will give me the strength to ask him the right questions." We talked like this nearly every evening. We used to stay in the synagogue after all the faithful had left, sitting in the gloom where a few half-burned candles still gave a flickering light. One evening I told him how unhappy I was because I could not find a master in Siget to instruct me in the Zohar, the Kabbalistic books, the secrets of Jewish mysticism. He smiled indulgently. After a long silence he said, "There are 1,001 gates leading into the orchard of mystical truth. Every human being has his own gate. We must never make the mistake of wanting to enter the orchard by any gate but our own. To do this is dangerous for the one who enters and also for those who are already there." And Moshe the Beetle, the poor barefoot of Siget, talked to me for long hours of the revelations and mysteries of the Kabbalah. It was with him that my initiation began. We would read together 10 times over the same page of the Zohar, not to learn it by heart, but to extract the divine essence from it. And throughout those evenings a conviction grew in me that Moshe the Beetle would draw me with him into eternity, into the time where the question and the answer would become one. Then one day they expelled all foreign Jews from Siget, and Moshe the Beetle was a foreigner. Crammed into cattle trains by Hungarian police, they wept bitterly. We stood on the platform and wept too. The train disappeared on the horizon. It left nothing behind but its thick, dirty smoke. I heard a Jew behind me heave a sigh. "What can we expect?" he said. "It's war." The deportees were soon forgotten. A few days after they had gone, people were saying that they had arrived in Galicia, were working there, and were satisfied with their lot. Several days passed, several weeks, several months. Life had returned to normal. A wind of calmness and reassurance blew through our houses. The traders were doing good business, the students lived buried in their books, and the children played in the street. One day, as I was just going into the synagogue, I saw, sitting on a bench near the door, Moshe the Beadle. He told his story and that of his companions. The train full of deportees had crossed the Hungarian frontier and on Polish territory had been taken in charge by the Gestapo. There it had stopped. The Jews had to get out and climb into lorries. The lorries drove toward a forest. The Jews were made to get out. They were made to dig huge graves. And when they had finished their work, the Gestapo began theirs. Without passion, without haste, they slaughtered their prisoners. Each one had to go up to a hole and present his neck. Babies were thrown into the air, and the machine gunners used them as targets. This was in a forest of Galicia, near Colomé. How had Moshe the Beadle escaped? Miraculously, he was wounded in the leg and taken for dead. Through long days and nights, he went from one Jewish house to the other, telling the story of Malka, the young girl who had taken 3 days to die, and Tobias, the tailor, who had begged to be killed before his sons. Moshe had changed. There was no longer any joy in his eyes. He no longer sang. He no longer talked to me of God or of the Kabbalah, but only of what he had seen. People refused not only to believe his stories, but even to listen to them. "He's just trying to make us pity him. What an imagination he has," they said, or even, "Poor fellow, he's gone mad." And as for Moshe, he wept. "Jews, listen to me. It's all I ask of you. I don't want money or pity. Only listen to me." He would cry between prayers at dusk and the evening prayers. I did not believe him myself. I would often sit with him in the evening after the service, listening to the stories and trying my hardest to understand his grief. I felt only pity for him. "They take me for a madman," he would whisper, and tears, like drops of wax, flowed from his eyes. Once I asked him this question: "Why are you so anxious that people should believe what you say? In your place, I shouldn't care whether they believed me or not." He closed his eyes as though to escape time. "You don't understand," he said in despair. "You can't understand. I have been saved miraculously. I managed to get back here. Where did I get the strength from? I wanted to come back to Siget to tell you the story of my death so that you could prepare yourselves while there was still time. To live? I don't attach any importance to my life anymore. I am alone. No, I wanted to come back and warn you. And see how it is? No one will listen to me." That was toward the end of 1942. Afterward, life returned to normal. The London radio, which we listened to every evening, gave us heartening news. The daily bombardment of Germany, Stalingrad, preparation for the Second Front. And we, the Jews of Siget, were waiting for better days, which would not be long in coming now. I continued to devote myself to my studies, by day the Talmud, and at night the Kabbalah. My father was occupied with his business and doings of the community. My grandfather had come to celebrate the New Year's with us, so that he could attend the service of the famous Rabbi of Borsch. My mother began to think that it was high time to find a suitable young man for Hilda. Thus the year 1943 passed by. So that is only about halfway through chapter 1. And chapter 1 takes a little bit of time. It is about 10 pages long. And those pages, they're pretty long. There's a lot of writing on those pages. So I want you guys, when we come to class this week, I'll have you guys watch that. And then I'll discuss and explain a little bit about what we just read, why Ellie opens the book with that story. And that will be our plan for Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, and then I will pick up this weekend and I will do another recording to finish out chapter 1, and then we'll be well on our way into the book. Okay, guys, see you in a little while.